Okay, today we begin Parshas Vayeshev, and we move into a new era in the book of Bereshis. Quickly to review the Parsha, there's three main topics in Parshas Vayeshev. Topic number one is the discord between Yossi and his brothers, and how the brothers ultimately sell him into slavery down to Egypt while telling their father that he's been killed. That's the first story. Second story is the story with Yehuda and Tamar, which we'll come back to in a moment. And the third story is the story with Yosef. Well, now he is in Egypt and he has to deal with his dealings with Potiphar and the wife of Potiphar, her false accusations to him, and how he is thrown into jail because of those false accusations, how he interprets the dreams of the butler and the baker, and how he is forgotten by the butler and remains languishing in jail at the end of the Parsha. Those are the three main themes of Parshas Vayeshev. And today, so last couple of years, 2 years ago, I dealt with Yosef and his dreams, and how one can fulfill dreams. Last year, I just slipped my mind what we talked about, but we have not talked about recently the story with Yehuda and Tamar, which is a very difficult story to understand, and we want to give as much explanation as possible to make it clear what was going on in this story and what are the lessons we can learn from here. So I gave you basically the whole Chumash that you need in Hebrew and English is the main thing on the sheet. In the bottom I gave you a few sources. I didn't have time to write more sources out over here. So I'm gonna paraphrase a lot of the English parts of the story. We're gonna just walk through the story, and then we'll stop at important points that have to be made over here. Okay. First thing we're told, Yehuda descends from his brothers. It says he descends from his brothers, and Rashi says after the brothers come back to Yaakov and they see that Yaakov is unconsolable, he cannot get any consolation for the death of Yosef. So the brothers then turn around and blame Yehuda for what happened. If you recall, when Yosef came to meet them, the brothers first wanted to kill him. Then Reuven suggested, let's throw him into the pit. And then Yehuda said, let's sell him to the Yishmaelim that are traveling by. So it was Yehuda's advice to sell Yosef. And the brothers, when they saw that Yaakov couldn't console himself, they said, it's your fault. And that's unfortunately their reaction. Although they wanted to kill Yosef, Yehuda said sell him, and they saw that didn't work either. So they said, you didn't show any leadership for us, Yehuda. He gave us a bad idea, and we are now treated. He therefore descended in his level, as it were, and the brothers didn't want to have anything to do with him. So Yehuda moved away from home and moved to the southern region of Eretz Yisrael. There he made friends with a fellow named Chira, and there he married a Canaanite woman. Okay, he married a Canaanite woman, and he was with her, and he had 3 sons, Onan, and Shelah. Okay, he had 3 sons. Then, as the sons grow up a little bit, the story takes many, many years over here, and then Yehuda finds a wife for his firstborn son, and that is the righteous Tamar, who some say was even the daughter of Shem, from the son of Noach, but a very righteous lineage. Okay. What happens? So his son when they get married to have children. So what does do? Instead of impregnating his wife, he is able to cease his intimacy in a way that he wastes his seed and is not able to impregnate his wife. He does this purposely. Why? Because she was beautiful and didn't want any pregnancies to take away from her beauty. Now, this was something that Hashem did not like at all, and therefore the Torah says, so Hashem had die. Hashem kills for the sin of wasting his seed. Yehuda then turns to the next son, Onan, and he says, now you have a mitzvah to do. What's the mitzvah? The mitzvah is called Yibum. Yibum does not translate well into English. The English translation calls it a levirate marriage. That doesn't make any, I don't understand what those words mean. But it means that when a man dies without having any children, there's a mitzvah for the brothers to marry the wife and to have children. And that's what Yehuda says to Onan. He says in verse number 8, he says, go and be with your brother's wife, and you'll establish seed for your brother. You'll establish a seed for your brother. So what happens? So Onan, it says, he knew that this child would not be his, the seed would not be his, and therefore when he was intimate with Tamar, it says in verse 11 that he also wasted his seed. And the Torah says, and I underlined those two words there, it says he did bad in the eyes of Hashem, and Hashem killed him also. Gamoto, he killed him also. From the word gamoto, it now reveals why Hashem killed Er. The Torah never says what Er did, just as he killed him. He did bad, we don't know what the bad was. But now we know, since the second brother, gamoto, also him wasted the seed, so we know that Er also wasted the seed. So they both wasted their seed, so Hashem killed them too. They both died. So now, let me see, which point do I want to bring out now? Where is this? Yes. So why did Onan not want to impregnate Tamar? So the Torah says, "Levilti nasan zera lachit." He didn't want to give seed to his brother. So Rashi says that what did he not do? Rashi says this because usually the son would be called after the name of the brother, and it wouldn't be named after him. In other words, the child would be named. Onan didn't want to have children because the kid would be called Little Er Jr. So he didn't want that. So Ramban questions Rashi. He says, number one, well, that's not necessarily so. The second brother is not obligated to call the child by the name of the dead brother. Right? Number one, they don't have to. So what's the problem? And number two, the bigger question is, why wouldn't he want to name him after his brother? Wouldn't most people be happy to name somebody after their dead brother? If you had a brother who died rather young and you had children, you wouldn't name him after your brother? So why would he not want to name him after the brother? That's an important question. Okay, what happens next? Now, you have to remember something very important here. These Averos that were done by Er and Onan were done in the privacy of the bedroom in their homes. So, who knew about the sins that Er and Onan did in the entire world? Hashem and one other person, Tamar. Nobody else knew the Averos that they did. Now, these fellows died at a very young age, which is very unusual. You know, maybe one son dies at a young age, but to have two sons die at a young age is most unusual. Now, the rabbis discuss a concept of what we call a isha katlonis, which literally means a murderous wife, which is to be understood as a woman with bad mazal, with a bad mazal. And it is possible to have women that if somebody marries this woman, they are part of that bad mazal, and they can die by being married to this woman. So the rabbis say that, well, how would you know a woman has bad mazal? So they say if a woman marries a husband, and the husband is a young man, a healthy man, and dies for no inexplicable reason, that's once, okay, could happen. But once it's twice, and for sure 3 times, you start being suspicious that maybe this woman is carrying a bad mazal. She's carrying a bad mazal. So Yehuda was thinking that. Now he has one more son, Shelah. So he figures, okay, now Shelah should be the next in line to do the mitzvah of Yibum for both brothers. But Yehuda says to Tamar, he kind of pushes her off and says, you know what, Shelah's a little bit too young, we'll have to wait. You go back home to your father, and we'll deal with it later. But as time passed, and Shelah grew up, and Yehuda did not give Shelah to Tamar, because he was concerned that she was, we call this, bad luck wife. He doesn't marry to Shelah. Well, now Tamar is a very righteous woman. And Tamar realizes that she doesn't want to go through her whole life not having children, and especially from children from the distinguished family of Yaakov. So Tamar, and so she waits. And as well, the Torah tells us that Yehuda's wife dies. So he's really having lots of tragedies. His 2 sons die. His wife dies. He gets over a period of mourning. And then, to show symbolically that he's over the period of mourning, he's about to go for the great festival of the shearing of the wool of the sheep. That's a big, big deal, because that's your whole cash crop. You're shearing the sheep. So you go for the shearing ceremony, and when all this wool is shorn, then you make a big party to show that, oh, Baruch Hashem, we made our parnasa for the year. So Tamar finds out, the rabbis say, through Ruach HaKodesh, through divine inspiration. Hashem lets her know that Yehuda is going to the place where the sheep are being shorn. So the Torah now tells us, so what does she do? In verse 14, it says she removes the clothes of her widowhood, puts on different clothes that will be more fitting for someone of an ill repute. She puts a veil on her head, and she stands by the crossroads, by the fork in the road, where Yehuda would be traveling. Okay, so it's interesting that the Torah calls that called a Pesach Einayim. This crossroads is called a Pesach Einayim. So that's very unusual. Pesach Einayim literally means opening of the eyes. Literally, Pesach is an opening, Einayim of the eyes. Very unusual wording to call a crossroads. So Rashi picks up on this, and in the second source at the bottom of the page, Rashi says she sat at the crossroads. Our rabbis explain, at the entrance of the house of our father Avraham, who all eyes longed to see. Now, Rashi usually gives us simple interpretations. Crossroad doesn't need much explanation. She sat by the crossroads. You can understand, crossroad would be a place where harlots would occupy themselves. A lot of traffic, so it's a pretty busy area, right? Truck stop. So that's a Pesach Einayim. It's a crossroads. Rashi is giving us a whole esoteric interpretation, meaning to say, at the entrance of the house of our father Avraham. What does Avraham have to do with anything here? Whom all eyes long to see. That's Pesach Einayim. Pesach, the entrance of the eyes. Eyes look to that Pesach. Which is a very difficult Rashi. Doesn't seem to make any sense. What's Rashi saying? I mean, Avram's been dead for hundreds of years. Was this an old house of Avram? Like, what does it mean? Avram had a house here? People used to, what does that have to do with the whole story? We need to know anything about Avram over here. There was an entrance. People go to his house. They long to see Avram. Where does this fit into the story at all? It just doesn't make any sense in the story. So we continue. So in verse, and now she does this. Why does she do this? Torah says because she saw that Shelah grew up, and Yehuda did not give her Shelah for a what? For a husband. So she very much wants to have children from the family of Yehuda. As we will see, that royalty is destined to come from Yehuda. Royalty is destined to come from Yehuda. She wants very much to be able to be the mother of the children that are going to come from Yehuda. So therefore, she is desperate to be with Yehuda, or from the family, since he couldn't be with this kid. So she's going to go right to him. So she veils herself, covers her up. Yehuda's walking in the street, and in verse 15 it says he sees this woman. He does not know it is his daughter-in-law. And he figures she's a harlot. Why? And why couldn't he recognize it's a daughter-in-law? Because she was very modest in her home. Now, the Medrash says, very interestingly, Chazal say, that every Kala who is modest in her father-in-law's house, and that's what she was. She was very modest. Because so modest, the father-in-law never saw her face. Once. Very modest. Right? Such a woman merits from her that kings will come. And that's what happened. She was modest to the point that Yehuda didn't even recognize who she was. He didn't recognize her. She had the veil. And the rabbis learned from here that royalty comes from people who are very modest. And she was very modest. Her father never knew who she was. So we just have to understand in general, why is kingship a quid pro quo for tznius? Why is that the reward for this modesty that she has? So that's something we're going to have to think about as we continue. So what happens? So, on verse 16, the Torah says that Yehuda turned off on the road. He detoured to her and says, Havana. So the English doesn't translate so well over here. Havana explains the word come. Come. Please. So Rashi, on the third source at the bottom, says, please, meaning prepare yourself and your mind for this. He is going to be, engaging her in her services. So the question on this Rashi is, what does she have to prepare for? Women who are in this business don't have to prepare themselves. They know exactly what they're doing. There's no preparation necessary. So what's Yehuda saying? Prepare yourself for over here. Okay, anyway, it says he doesn't know that he's his daughter-in-law. And then she says, oh, what are you going to pay me for my services? She says, I'll give you 2 goats. I'm going to shear my sheep. I'll come back. I'll give you 2 goats. So she says, well, I need a collateral to know. How do I know you're not going to run away? You're not going to come back with anything. So he says, okay, I'll tell you what. I'm going to give you my... So he says, well, what do you want? So I want your ring seal. I want your psilecha, which we have to translate that word. Umat, and I want your staff. I want 3 things. Your ring seal, your staff, and something called psilecha. The English translates the words psilecha as your wrap. W-R-A-P. So what does that mean exactly? What a psila is? So Rashi says it's a cloak. I want your cloak. So Ramban asks that. So is Yehuda going to go without his cloak? How's he going to give her the cloak? What's he going to walk around with? He doesn't pack his bags. He doesn't have a whole suitcases. So Ramban says he wore tzitzis. She wanted his tzitzis. So that's a very interesting thing. Yehuda would be giving his tzitzis to be rendezvousing with a woman. Seems to be insulting the mitzvah. That's exactly what it means. Okay, we'll have to analyze that. Anyway, what happens, so he has the one night with her, and he gets up and goes on his way, and he says, I'll be back tomorrow, whatever. So stay where you are, and I'll bring you back the goats. Right? And she conceives that night from Yehuda. She gets up, she goes back to her father's house, changes her clothes, and it's good old-fashioned Tamar. Yehuda sends his friend to go send the goats back a couple days later. She ain't around. He asks around, can't find her. Goes to Yehuda, says, what should you do? He says, listen, we can't do anything. Just have to let it go. We tried our best, and we don't want to cause too much of a commotion as to why we want to send 2 goats to this woman. All right, time passes. 3 months pass. And Yehuda, and now word gets out that Tamar is pregnant. So now, remember, Yehuda does not realize that he was with Tamar. So now, Yehuda says, this woman was supposed to be staying in her father's house. She was not allowed to marry anybody at this point in time because she still had no yibum was done with her. Remember, a woman whose husband dies and doesn't have children, she's not allowed to just... Normally a woman can, if her husband dies, can marry anybody she wants. But if your husband died without having kids, that means you now have an obligation to marry somehow into that family, and they have first rights. And you can't be engaged with anybody else. You're not free to be with who you want. So what happens now when he sees that his daughter-in-law is pregnant? He figured for sure she was fooling around with somebody that she shouldn't do, and that would be a terrible crime. That's a terrible crime of immorality. So he convenes a court session to discuss how to deal with her, to prove if she was guilty or not, and what punishment to give her. And this was an extremely well-publicized court room. The Medrash even says many great dignitaries were at this meeting, not the least of which was many of the brothers and Yitzchak Avinu. Great people were in this court, and Yehuda was the district attorney. Yehuda brings all the evidence and says, look, this is this woman, and she's pregnant, so I think we have to give her the proper justice. And proper justice in those days would be that she'd be burnt as a punishment of death. To teach, women cannot, act in an immoral fashion. Now, in the last moment, so Tamar, she passes a message on to Yehuda and says, if that's your judgment, that's fine. but I just want to tell you, and I'm sure they asked questions. She says, who was the man? Who was the I'm not telling. But do you deny that you weren't with a man? I mean, you're pregnant. I'm pregnant. Who are you with? I'm not telling you. If you're not going to tell, you're not going to tell us the circumstance. We have no other choice. We have to kill you. So right before they're ready to kill her, she says to Yehuda, she sends a message to Yehuda, says, I just want you to know one thing. Whoever is the owner of this pair of tzitzis and this ring seal and this staff, that's the person I was pregnant with. So at this point, Yehuda understands that he's the father. So now he has to make a very, very difficult decision. You know, what decision would you make? Remember, Yehuda is a very prominent person. He's a very prominent person. He's the son of Yaakov. He was, and in this area, this is not in Hebron, it's in the southern area of Israel, he's the most holy, the holiest person, most dignified person. He's a descendant of Yaakov, living amongst them. And can you imagine what kind of scandal this would be? To find out that he was with his own daughter-in-law and didn't even realize it. And he thought that she, you know, how's he going to explain himself away? So it was a very difficult decision had to be made. And Yehuda says, announces in front of the whole court, Sat kamimeni, she is more righteous than I. And indeed, I was the father, and I did not give my youngest son to her, and I am the father. To which there was probably a collective gasp from the audience, you know, right? And he accepted that upon her. She was not put to death, and she was able to bring to full term. There were twin children inside of her, and the first child that came out, his name was Peretz, and the second one, his name is Serach, and that's the end of the story. That's a little bookend of this story. So there's a lot of questions about this story. First of all, what do we need this story? How does the story fit into the whole story with Yosef and the brothers? We started the first story was Yosef and the brothers and the difficulties, and they sell Yosef. The last story deals with Yosef in Egypt. This middle story, like it seems to be interrupting the whole flow of the story. It's interrupting the whole flow of the story. We're dealing with Yosef and the brothers. And I got a private story with Yehuda and his own business that he's doing. It has nothing with the story with Yosef. Question one. The answer to that question is, and that really is the theme of this week's Parsha, is that this week's Parsha, we're dealing with a lot of brothers. We're dealing with a lot of people. And the issue is, you can have a lot of brothers, but who is going to be the leader of the brotherhood? Who is going to be the melech, the leader of the brothers? And that was a difficult question, because there were two prominent wives, Leah and Rachel. There was a firstborn to Leah, that was Reuven. Firstborn to Rachel, that was Yosef. Who was going to be the leader of the brothers? Yaakov's not going to live forever. Yaakov's getting older already. From last week's Parsha, with the story of Dinah, we see that the brothers already were beginning to take matters on their own. The men had not boys anymore, they're men. We have to start looking into who the future leadership of the Jewish people is going to be. And to a great degree, that was the source of contention between the brothers and Yosef. Yosef has the dreams, basically saying, I'm going to be the leader. And the other brother is saying, you're not going to be the leader. And the question is, who is going to be the leader? And amongst the brothers themselves, it wasn't so easy as to who the leader was going to be. Reuven has already made a number of blunders in previous parshios when he switched the beds of Yaakov, and Yaakov rebukes him for that. Shimon and Levi destroyed the city of Shechem in last week's parsha. Yaakov rebukes them for that. So it appeared that the next brother in line to be leader would be Yehuda. On the other hand, you have Yosef saying he wants to be the leader. So what's happening in these parshios, in this parsha specifically, we are being taught as to what it takes to be a leader, what it takes to be a melech. And the Gemara tells us in this story specifically, and since that's the issue of the contention between Yosef and the brothers as to who's to be the leader, so we have to talk about the leadership. And Yosef, the brothers summarily say, you ain't going to be the leader. Boom, they throw him down to Egypt. So he's out of the picture. So who is going to be the leader? Yehuda suffers a failing because the brothers weren't happy with how things ended up, because Yaakov was very sad. The brother says, you can't be our leader. Yehuda now leaves the brotherhood. But what this story is telling us, how Yehuda reclaims his ability to be a leader. And the Medrash says, because Yehuda was able to say the truth in this difficult situation, when he admitted he was the father, he would be able to become a leader again amongst the Jewish people. So we see that this whole story is to show what Yehuda did to deserve to be a leader. But that's not enough. If you look in the first source, the Midrash Rabbah, under the Psukim, it says like this: when Yehuda saw Tamar, it says he wanted to pass by, and God prepared for him the angel who's appointed over lust. The angel said to Yehuda, "Where are you going? And from where will kings and great people stand?" In other words, the angel's saying, you got to go to this woman. He says, "I don't want to go to this woman. She's a harlot." He says, "You got to go. If you don't go, where are kings going to come from if not from this?" So he turned aside to her on the road against his will, which was not for his benefit. That's what the Medrash says. Can you imagine a very, very holy rabbi, the holiest rabbi you know. He's walking down a street in Mea Shearim, and it's late at night, and he's at the corner of Mea Shearim and that area, and to the new city of Yerushalayim. And there happens to be a prostitute at the corner winking at him. And he says, "Ugh, pfui, let me go away from this." And Mom says, No, you have to go. Where do you think king is going to come from? Go. It's almost like he gets pushed into this. And the Medrash is clear to say, against his will, which is not for his benefit. So it's a very difficult Medrash to understand. It's almost an apologetic Medrash. Saying, don't think Yehuda was just a grub guy who just, looks at every beautiful woman and gets involved, right? Not like, the Republican candidates. But it was forced. It was forced. Okay, we'll have to analyze that. But you see from here clearly that kings came from this, which really brings the broader question. Why does kingship have to come from this kind of a story? Why in this way? Why couldn't Hashem have, he has Er die, Onan die, Tamar has to dress up to seduce her father-in-law, and from this is where kings are going to come from? Why does Hashem have to do this? Couldn't there have been an easier way? You have to have a Medrash pushing him into this? Just do it simple. Yehuda goes down, and he marries Tamar straight. Tamar must have been a righteous woman, so he married Tamar. Finished. Why do you have to go marry another woman, a Canaanite woman, and they have 3 boys, and then he makes a shech for his son? Why all this story going on over here? A. B, all right, we already discussed, why is he involved with the Zona? Okay, we already gave a partial answer over here. But there's a couple more important medrashim we have to bring out over here. So Medrash says, he who starts a mitzvah and does not complete it, the punishment he gets for this is his wife and children die. That's what the Medrash says. Now, what's the proof? It was from Yehuda. Yehuda started a mitzvah. What was the mitzvah he started? He started a mitzvah to try to save Yosef. But he didn't complete the mitzvah. Because just telling him to sell him really didn't complete any mitzvah at all. There was no mitzvah. Selling Yosef wasn't saving Yosef. And obviously, Yehuda was either afraid of the brothers or whatever it was. He started to do the mitzvah to save his brother, but he did not save his brother. And therefore, someone who doesn't finish a mitzvah, what's the punishment? His wife and kids die. That's what happened to Yehuda. His wife and kids died. So the question has to be asked, why? A. B. What do you mean? His sons died for other reasons. It said because they were sinners. It's nothing to do with him. Torah says Aaron and Onan were sinners. So it's have to do with the father, as if it's a punishment for the father. Needs to be understood as well. Okay, those are the main questions. A lot of questions over here. The whole story is just odd. Kings have to come from such an odd background. Very odd. Why the kids get punished because the father doesn't finish a mitzvah. One other important thing, forgot to mention. Rabbis learned one more important lesson from this story. Tamar refused to reveal the identity of Yehuda, to which the Gemara says, better a person should be thrown into a fiery furnace than to embarrass another person publicly. We learn from this story. So the question is, why do we need to learn this message at this point in the history of the world? Why is that important? Why is this Rashi telling me that the entranceway was the entranceway of Avram, who people's eyes would rise to him? What does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with a person being have tznius in her father-in-law's house? Kings come from that. What's this all rotating around? What's the whole point over here? So let's begin with the following, and this is some ideas we've said in the past, but I want to just put it all together over here and develop this a little better now. There is a contradiction in Chazal. On the one hand, Shlomo HaMelech says, King Solomon says, Sonei matonos yichya, a person who hates presents will live. In other words, a person should never want to take presents from people. You shouldn't take presents from people. It's a good advice, never take presents. You take presents from people, you're beholden to people, you have no life. If you owe people, you have no life. Don't take presents from people. On the other hand, Rashi in Parshas Vayeshev says, Tzadikim always ask God to give them a matnas chinam, an unwarranted gift. They say, God, help me. I know I don't deserve it, but give me anyway. So you see that Tzadikim ask God for gifts. So what does it mean? If King Solomon said you shouldn't ask for gifts, and Tzadikim ask for gifts, what's the answer? So the answer is there's two levels of presents. There's a present of someone giving you basic sustenance and existence. And that, King Solomon says, you should never take those kinds of presents. If you don't have any food to eat, you don't have anything, and you're going to take it from other people, better hate those presents, because when you take a present from something that is a basic need, you now are beholden to that person. Your life is no life. If your basic needs are met by other people, then what kind of self-esteem do you have in your life? Do what you can and don't have to come on to others, no matter what it is. There's many Gemaras to talk about this. Better one should do a strange work, a work he's not accustomed to doing, as we said a couple Thursdays ago. That it's like avodah zarah in terms of him not being used to this work, then have to get handouts from people. Never take a handout. It's not a life. If your life depends on getting from somebody else, it's not a life. Better not to take. Work as hard as you can, but don't take any gifts. On the other hand, we say, so why do you want brachas from Hashem? But on the other hand, let's say you already have existence. Let's say you have a partner, you have a good job. And then, a friend of yours comes back from Eretz Yisrael and brings you back a mezuzah. Gives you a gift. Should you take the gift or not? So, listen, I can live with or without the mezuzah. I don't need the mezuzah. The guy's just showing me a token of friendship. Okay, so I'm taking it as a token of friendship. I don't owe my life to this guy. So there's a difference on what kind of presents you get. Is this a present that your whole life depends on the present? Better not to take that, because now you have no self-esteem to yourself. But if you can take care of yourself, you got everything you need. Guy comes and gives you a gift. So that gift, the guy's just showing he likes you. So what's wrong with taking a gift to let a guy show that he likes you? So that's what the Rashi means. When the tzaddikim ask from things from Hashem as a free gift, the tzaddikim are saying, listen, I have what I need, but Hashem, if you want to show me that you love me, so please give me this, and you show me that you love me, and that's fine. A tzaddik is allowed to ask for this. That receiving that kindness does not detract from the kind of person that you are. Let's say a mashal. Let's say a parent's giving to kids. Certain parents, for example, let's say a kid can't make a living. So the parent buys him a house, pays the mortgage, is giving him a monthly gift of $3,000 a month, whatever. How do you think the kid feels? The kid feels like a nothing, right? But what if, on the other hand, the kid is a university graduate, he now has a profession, he's a doctor, he's a lawyer, and he's making his own money, and the father comes over one day and the son does well, right? Father comes by and gives him two tickets to go on vacation. And the kid could afford it himself. So that the kid won't feel bad taking the gift. Dad wants to show me he loves me. Okay, Dad shows me he wants to love me. Okay, I'll take the present, I'll take the gift. So that's a show of affection. Okay. So there's two types of receiving gifts. There's one where you're receiving your whole existence from the gift, and that's a gift that people will resent. And then there's a gift that shows that somebody loves you. Okay. So let's talk about Avram Avinu for a minute. Avram Avinu, which we know, championed the idea of chesed, of kindness, of giving. So what kind of giving did Avram do? There's a lot of different interpretations, but we know there's a critical difference between Avram before he got his circumcision at the end of Parshas Lech Lecha and Avram after he did the circumcision after Parshas Lech Lecha. We don't find of all the chesed Avram did in his life, in the entire Parshas Lech Lecha, not once is there a mention of his chesed. Only in Parshas Vayera, after he circumcised himself, does the Torah go into great detail about the chesed that he did to the three strangers who came to him. So what was the difference in the chesed that Avram did to these people? So basically we could say that the chesed that Avram did beforehand, I think many ways you can learn this, but was not the optimal chesed. Only after the circumcision, where circumcision itself is an act to show that you're not involved in self-gratification, could Avram really rise to the level of doing chesed the way chesed was meant to be done, in terms of a godly kind of chesed. And that's what the Torah talks about a lot in Parshas Vayera. So what kind of chesed did he do beforehand? Could be many types of chesed. Maybe he gave presents that people didn't really need for basic survival. Maybe he gave things for basic survival, but not maybe in the best way possible. But after the circumcision, Avram now perfected how to do kindness. Because remember, every kindness is a double-edged sword. If I give a kindness that the person really doesn't need it, okay, it's not a problem. I give the person mezuzah from Eretz Yisrael, I'll never have a problem giving that kind of gift. But let's say the guy really is a down and out and he needs basic existence, you have to give him basic existence, there's always going to be a problem. That person is going to be upset. At who? At you. Why? It's always the double-edged sword of kindness. The more you help a person and the more desperate he needs the help, the more he will hate you. Right? Why is that? Because you keep reminding him of how he's totally incapable of helping himself. It's a double-edged sword of kindness. Every kindness has the problem. The more I gift him, the more I help him, the less he's able to help himself, and the more he knows that I'm the reason why he's standing on his 2 feet, but not on his 2 feet. It's on my feet he's standing on. And that's why the Ger Rebbe's famous line that when somebody said that somebody is saying Lashon Hara about him, the Ger Rebbe said, I don't understand why he's saying Lashon Hara about him. I never did a favor to him in my life. Meaning to say, if you really help a person out in a great way possible, they will learn to resent you because you are the ones who put them on the feet and not themselves. So what is it that Avram did that was so unique? Avram perfected the way of doing kindness without other people realizing they were getting the kindness from them. And Avram would be able to give them what they really needed without them realizing that he was the one that was giving to them in such a desperate way. And that's where you find, for example, when the angels came out to him, he doesn't say, come into my house, you poor insignificant people, and you're starving and you're this, and I'm going to help you and you're going to have existence for me. He told them, listen, just stay outside. I'm making a barbecue. I'm expecting a lot of visitors. I'm probably going to be throwing out a lot of food. So you can do me a big favor. You know what? Instead of me throwing out all this food, I got a lot of leftovers from the barbecue. Can you help me and finish up the food? And stay outside. Take a little bit of water. Avram always tries to minimize his role in the giving of the person. That's a very important aspect of chesed. When you do a chesed, you do it, and we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago with Rachel. You do a chesed, always try to do it in a way that the receiver doesn't know he's getting it from you. And even if there's no way out, you minimize yourself to the point that the person really doesn't feel that they owe you a lot. And that was what Avram was able to do. Avram was, even if he was giving them, but he was not the center of attention in this. This is the kind of chesed that has to be developed. If you know a person needs money, you can go to another person and say, here's $50,000. Tell this guy you're going to hire him, give him a job. Let him work, and he's working for you. The guy will never know I gave him the $50,000, and the guy has self-esteem. This is what the ultimate of kindness is. The ultimate of chesed is to give in a way that nobody knows that you have given it, and it comes with a price. What's the price? The person has to, so to speak, minimize himself and not be concerned for his own feelings. In other words, when a person gives, there's many levels of giving. One level of giving is, you give, you have to feel, why do you give? Someone will say, I give, it feels good, I like to give. I enjoy giving. Now that's not bad. It's not bad if you enjoy giving, but it's not the way God gives. God gives even if he doesn't enjoy it. It's not a question of joy, it's because God gives because he's a giver, finished. And God gives in a way where he minimizes himself. Everybody gets from God 24/7, and very few people recognize it comes from God. See how clever he is? He gives you life, he gives you health, he gives you everything, And do you stop every minute and say, oh, I owe this to God, I owe that to God, I owe everything to God? No, that already you have to stop, you'd have to think, you'd have to ponder. But God makes it in a way, if it was otherwise, how could there be so many atheists in the world? You can only be an atheist if you don't believe there's a God. Well, I understand, God's supplying you 24/7, and there's so many people who don't believe there's a God. It must be God did a good way of giving to us without realizing He gave it to us. That's the way God gives. And Avram emulated God. So he would give in a way that, like God gives. And people don't even realize that He's there. This is the level of kindness that Avram developed. And this is the level of kindness of which majesty and malchus is all about. Being a king means that you are dedicated to providing kindness to your kingdom without any self-interest of your own. That is what it means to being a Jewish king, which is exactly the opposite of how the secular world understands a king. No matter how the secular world learns to be a king, you could have kings that are terrible dictators who are doing it totally for themselves, abusing their countrymen. You could have benevolent dictators who really care to make their constituents have a better life, but he wants them all to know that it came from him. And they have to show loyalty to him because he's such a great guy. But at the end of the day, the secular view of a king is that the king has a tremendous amount of self invested in him being the king. Everybody knows that he's the king. Everybody's beholden to the king. And that's a great high to be a king. Look at all these people who have to come on to me. And I have control over them. That is the secular king. A Jewish king is not like that at all. A Jewish king has to be totally dedicated for his constituents, but also should get no credit for what happens to the constituency. That is already a very difficult level to be at. But that's what Malchus is. The rabbis say Malchus is an expression, leis le migarmei klum. A king has nothing of his own. He's got all the wealth of the kingdom. The storehouses are filled with wealth. There's billions of dollars in the storage houses. But the king doesn't have anything. He has nothing. It's all for the realm. Now, let me give you a proof to this. Very important proof. Gemara says, every morning King David would get up early and have a meeting with his advisors. And the question the advisors asked him every day was the same topic. Tzorchei amcha merubim. The Jewish people have great needs. Amcha Yisrael tzrichim parnasa. Your Jewish people need parnasa. They need parnasa. So now King David had options. Now if you're the king and your advisors say, you have poor people there, what options could you exercise? There's lots of options. The first option he says is, let's work, have an economy where people can support one another. Let the people make business with one from another. Let's figure ways to have certain business initiatives where one guy can be a businessman and selling to another, and the wealth will be created amongst the people. They tried economic solutions to have a stronger economy. Got to a point where they said, the economy is so sluggish, we can't even support ourselves. So the king says, okay, with that matter, well, let's go to battle. And we'll go and conquer other countries, and wealth will come from other countries. Now, there's one question the rabbis ask. Didn't the king have great storage houses of wealth? Couldn't he have taken money and cleaned out the warehouses and give money, have a welfare state? After all, Jews are kind, right? You're a kind king. You have millions of dollars in the treasure houses. Go empty them out and give everybody an Obama check. We'll give every Jew $50,000 and that'll be fine. They'll all have what to live on. Let's fill the economy with money. He didn't do that. Why not? Because the answer is that wouldn't work. That wouldn't be a kindness that the people would be happy with. You don't want a constituency that knows they owe their lives to this man. At the end of the day, you don't want that. Every man, every constituent has to feel, I'm standing on my own 2 feet. I'm making my own parnasa. And therefore, it's worth it for us to try other means, anything, but not because we don't want to be kind, not because we philosophically say, I don't want to give people. I want to give. I want them to have. But if I give them, they're beholden to me, and they'll have no self-esteem, and that's the cruelest thing you could do to somebody. We have to find a way to get the economy back on its feet. That everybody has a chance to go out there and make business and make his own money and be successful. And that's the job of government, to make the economy thrive. And everybody can say, I've done it. And to not make a welfare state. Now, of course, doesn't mean to say there isn't an obligation to do chesed. If people need, you don't let them starve in front of your face. But the best option is let a person make his own parnasa. And that's why every day they have to worry about this, because, yes, you know, in economics, it never just runs smooth. There's always cycles and this and that. You always got to be keeping an eye and monitoring the economy. You know, how can we make the economy in a way that everybody can go out and put a full day's work and come out and make some money? It's a very difficult thing. So a lot of you just write more checks, conquer a few more countries. Remember, David Melch's a powerful king, very powerful. Just go and get money. He says, no, let's try the harder way. Let everybody earn their own money. They'll all feel good about themselves. That is the way chesed really should be done. And that's the job of a king. The king, in the background, has to have the economy running well, so nobody feels they owe anything to the king. And that's the real way a Jewish king has to conduct himself. Yeah?
But he built a temple.
Yeah.
Is that a work program?
No, the temple is a commandment from God.
But it's a work program.
It's not a work. I know what you're saying, but it's not a work program.
But I'm not saying it. Because the fact is, he didn't hire his own people. He brought people and craftsmen.
First of all, David Melch did not build the Beis Hamikdash. Shlomo Melch did.
Sorry?
David Melch did not build the Beis Hamikdash. Shlomo Melch did. Shlomo Melch built it. And it wasn't a very long program. It didn't take that long to build it. And it was a command from God. It wasn't a work program. He could have maybe done other work programs. Possible. But the point being, the king every day has to worry about the parnas of the Jews, and has to provide it for them in a dignified way. That's what we see from this Gemara. So now, what does that have to do with this parsha? Now, let's come back to this parsha. There's a very unusual mitzvah that's associated with the building. Remember, Yehuda now is the cornerstone of kingship. From this story, kings are coming. So what's the precise mitzvah that's involved over here? The mitzvah of yibum. The mitzvah of marrying your brother's wife. So let's think about this mitzvah. The Torah says what? What did Yehuda say to his second son? He said, establish a seed for your brother. The Torah even says, make a name for your brother. Yehuda says, Hakem zera lachicha. In the Torah it says, make a name for your brother. So it's not just the point of making a name for your brother. But let's think about what are you doing for this brother? What are you doing for the deceased brother? It's not like you're giving the brother something. But more than this, you are having the brother be as if he is alive. The brother's dead. When a person's dead, there's total finality to it, isn't it? A person's dead, there's nothing left to his life. Now, if a person dies with kids, at least there's sense of perpetuity. The brother dies, there's nothing there. The ultimate chesed is to try to make somebody be as if they're alive. How can you make them be alive? How's this going to work? You have a dead brother. How can you do a chesed to make this guy alive? What are you going to do? So, you have, now think about it, two people in the world. Who are the two people who are probably most similar one to another in the whole world? Two brothers. In all likelihood, they may not be exactly the same, but two brothers, they were raised in the same house, same parents, same upbringing, same genes, same culture, same nature. There's a lot of similarities. Sometimes even voices can be the same. I'm not saying they're not different, but if you're going to take from people around the world, a man dies, who's the person who most approximates this guy? Not totally, but most. The guy's brother. The guy's brother most approximates this guy. So now what happens? What's the mitzvah saying? The mitzvah saying you have to go along now and marry your dead brother's widow. Now I want to ask you, how many of you would be inclined to do such a thing? most people like to pick their own wife. Wouldn't you say probably the most important thing in your life, the biggest decision you're ever going to make in your life is who you marry? Wouldn't you say it's about the most important? Is any decision that's more important than that? That's most important. This person's going to be your whole life. Wherever you go, you see this person all the time. The most important decision that's most necessary for your existence is your spouse. It's your other half soul. I mean, it's so important. Comes to Torah, and look what kind of mitzvah it gives. Torah says, I don't care about your personal opinion. Your brother died. You got to marry this guy's wife. Now, how does a person feel when to be able to do this mitzvah? Think about this. Why does the Torah B'davka want the brother? Why is it B'davka where the Torah wants it? What's the Torah trying to accomplish? And how is that going to affect the brother who's accomplishing this? So think about it. The widow, the woman who died, she desperately mourns over her husband. She misses her husband. It can't be replaced. Torah says, well, let's come as close as we can. What's the closest thing we can do to replace this husband of yours? He's going to marry his brother. His brother, there's a lot of similarities to this. And every time she sees the brother, and she's this man, it reminds her of her husband. And she feels great sense of consolation. Now, let me expand on this idea, because this is a very critical point. Now, that's good for her. What about the brother? The brother who's fulfilling this mitzvah feels like chopped liver. Let me give you an example. Let's say a widow and a widower get married, second marriage. What will all marriage counselors tell you to do? First of all, if you can, financially, whose house should they live in? Let's say a man lived in a house and his wife died. A woman lived in a house, her husband died, right? Now you have a widow and a widower. They're going to get remarried, right? They're going to marry each other, right? Okay, where should they live?
Neither.
Whose house? Neither house.
Neither.
Buy a new house. Why? Because you don't want to remind the other one of the other spouse. Right? Can you imagine if let's say a guy got married, whoever, it doesn't matter, male or female, the spouse is getting married and said, we're going to live in my house. And we're going to sleep in the room I slept with my husband. As a matter of fact, you can even wear his pajamas. As a matter of fact, you can wear his shoes. I got pictures of John all over the house. And every time I'm going to be with you, I'm going to think I'm with John. Right? Marriage counselors will not advise this. It's not a good idea, because the man wants to feel he's his own husband. You never want, and that's what they always say in second marriages or divorce, whatever. Don't bring up the old spouse. That's not healthy. And generally speaking, that is correct. That is correct. So what is the Torah telling you to do when it's time to do the mitzvah of Yibum? What's the Torah telling a man to do when he's doing the mitzvah of Yibum? He's saying, I want you to literally step into your brother's shoes. We want this woman to feel such a consolation that whenever she's with you, she thinks she's with your brother. So that his life is always remaining. And when they're going to have a child, they're going to call him after the deceased brother. And you know what you're going to feel like? Brother, chopped liver. You're going to feel, I got nothing out of this marriage. And God says, precisely. This is what this mitzvah is all about. This mitzvah is doing a chesed to this woman where you are getting absolutely nothing out of this. And this woman totally feels like the deceased husband is still around, right? And really what's happening, it's as if you don't exist. That's what's happening. Now this is what we call, that's the ultimate negation of one's own self. Now, the question is, now of course not everybody is able to do this. We can't make such a mitzvah that, that I don't know how many men could do this mitzvah the way the Torah is telling you to do the mitzvah. So now, and it could be some women don't even want this. So therefore there's an option. There's an option called chalitza. If the man refuses, we can't make him do this. This is a tremendous demand upon the man. Many men cannot do this just from a egotistical point of view, and the Torah recognizes that. So if he doesn't want to do this, a procedure called chalitza. So instead of marrying her, the whole procedure done in front of a bezdin, where she formally takes his shoe off his foot and spits in front of him and says, this is a man who does not want to uphold his brother's home, and now he doesn't have, it's like a divorce almost. She doesn't have to marry him, he doesn't have to marry her, and she's free to marry somebody else. So the Torah recognizes how hard this is, a very unusual, where you have a mitzvah where God says, this is a mitzvah, but if you don't want to do it, we give you a different mitzvah. It's one of the rare cases of the Torah where you have this. Usually the Torah says, do a mitzvah, there's no question. It says what? Put on tefillin. Got a choice? Well, if you want to put on tefillin, you could take your shoe off, we'll spit it, you don't have to put on tefillin. You got to put on tefillin. You got to put on tzitzis. You got to do mitzvahs. We don't have a choice. Now it's a mitzvah. It says, well, I'll tell you what, if you don't want to do mitzvah, you don't have to do the mitzvah. What's going on? The answer is, because God knows what he's asking is the impossible. He's asking the impossible. For a man to go and step mamish into his brother's shoes, to totally negate his own self. It's a tremendous level. But God cannot mandate and say that's the only option. If you're not up to that level, I understand. We'll have to have a procedure to release her from you. And it's so unfortunate you refused to maintain the life of your brother. Now, based on this, you understand the Ramban now. It's not that you have to, Ramban asked Rashi, do you have to really name the kid after it? No, you don't have to name. But the concept here is you're maintaining the life of the deceased brother. And that's always in Yibum. Because she's always seeing the dead brother in you. It's always that original relationship is coming back. So what's really happening is that the second husband really has no place in this marriage. It's very interesting. Question like this. What if, let's say, a man and woman are married for 40 years. They couldn't have any kids. She's beyond the age of conceiving. And the guy dies, right? Now he has another brother. Is she obliged? Does the mitzvah of Yibum still operate? Even though she can't have kids? The halacha says it does. It's an incredibly difficult mitzvah. So now, what does this mitzvah have to do with our story? It's everything to do with our story. Now, can you understand why Onan did not want to perform this mitzvah of Yibum? Can you understand why Onan? Onan says, I'm not prepared to become second fiddle. You want me to go marry, and you want my wife to think about the first husband all the time? What was Yehuda asking from Onan to do? Negate your existence for this mitzvah. He said, I'm not prepared to do this. He should have told that to his father and said, let's do chalitza. He didn't want to. Probably was a little bit of arrogance. He didn't want the father to think he's not listening to him. So he marries her, but he wastes his seed. He doesn't want to raise children that he's not going to get credit for. Everyone's going to say, oh, look, that's a little heir. It's the deceased brother's kid. You know what? I'm going to do all the work, and I'm not going to get any credit for this. So as Tamar will only see heir in this marriage, only seeing the child, he's not prepared to do this. Now, you begin to see what's going on over here. Yehuda, let's backtrack. Now it's going to make all sense. Yehuda, in the first story, he had an opportunity to show his greatness. He had a leadership opportunity. The brothers want to sell Yosef. What was the leader supposed to do? Stop it. Exert your leadership. Show that there's a God. We have to listen to the Torah. What we're doing is patent murder. What should Yehuda have said? He should have said, you're not selling him. Now, why didn't Yehuda do this to his brother? Why didn't he do that? If Yehuda knew it was wrong, why didn't he put his foot down and say to the brothers, I don't care, we're not selling him. Remember, he started a mitzvah. He wanted to save the brother, but he didn't complete the mitzvah. He says he wants to save him, but he says it's going to be very hard. It's going to be very hard to save him. I'm going to have to back off a little bit. Well, let's just sell him. He doesn't complete the mitzvah. Why not? Because Yehuda still had a little bit of self invested in this story here. Yehuda's afraid, what happens if they don't listen to me? What if they say no? A lot of things could happen. They could kill me, or just they disagree with me, and then my whole position with the brotherhood is lost, because they're not accepting his leadership. So therefore, telling them what to do jeopardizes his position. In other words, any politician has the same issue. You know what's right. You have the world economies now. What is the thing that every leader around the world should be telling to his country? What should the line be anywhere from Europe to North America? How are we going to make the economy better? One simple answer. Don't live lives that your finances cannot support. That's all. You have to live within your means. Simple rule. Live within your means. We have to cut down on credit. Has to be cut down. Can't live beyond our means. If we would not live beyond our means, we wouldn't have such a debt load. That's all. Every leader has to say that. Every leader has to say, we're going to have to may have to raise a little bit more taxes, but we definitely cannot give this kind of credit. All these leaders, that the economies can all be righted, but what you have to do, it's called, what do you call it, where you belt tightening. People have to say, there's going to be less fun in this world. You've gone way beyond for the last 30, 40 years. You're growing and spending without any stop. The economy can't hold it out anymore. We can't do it anymore. Well, go give us more money. This is not solutions. A solution is a difficult solution. A leader has to do. What's the fear? What's the downside? They could not elect you. At the end of the day, there's little Reb Zichel, little Mr. Me. Mr. Me still wants to be in the game. And if I'm jeopardizing my position, I'm not going to exert the leadership that I should be exerting. So telling them what to do jeopardizes his position. He didn't want to jeopardize his position. He listened to the masses. That's not leadership. Because why are you listening to the masses? It's not because you think you're a nobody. It's because you still want to be a somebody. If you don't care what the masses say, so let them get rid of me. It's not about me. It's what's better for everybody. And if what's better for everybody means they may not accept what I'm saying, and they may throw me out, then so be it. But people have to know, and they have to do what's best for them, and that has something to do with me. So when Yehuda failed the first time, it showed he was not worthy to be a king. If the reason you don't complete the mitzvah is because you're not willing to risk yourself, you're not worthy to be a king. Very important point. Remember, to be a king means, as far as you're concerned, you have nothing. It's not for you at all. There's nothing in it for you. Being a king, there's zero in it for you. And not just a king, any kind of leader in any kind of situation. Any kind of leader. If you're a rabbi of a shul, same thing. If any rabbi comes in and thinks there's something in it for him, he shouldn't be the rabbi. That's it. There's nothing in it for him. It's just for the congregation. That's it. If you're a leader in any position, a CEO, whatever, it's not for me, it's for everybody else. That's what, same thing in parenting. If there has to be something in it for you, then it's certainly distorted. There's only one thing, there's God, and that's the only reality. People have to live, the Jewish people have to live by God's law. And I have the job to make sure they do. And I'm to get nothing out of this. And if I get nothing, that is what Malchus is. And if at the end of the day, we have lots of, Malchus is is the last of the spheros. You have a lot of times people want to do good things. Think about it. Don't you notice a lot of times a person says, do a tzedakah drive. Person pledges $50,000, yeah? And then he doesn't give. So why not? Why didn't he give? He said he was going to give $50,000 and he didn't give. What happened? So you could say, well, I guess he changed. I guess he isn't such a kind guy after all. When he put his hand up, he said he was a kind guy. He changed his mind. He's not such a kind guy. That's not the answer. The answer is when a person pledges to give $50,000, he wants to do chesed. That's what he wants to do. He said, I'm pledging $50,000. Now it's time to give it. Giving it, that's another story. You need another attribute to give it. That's called malchus. Malchus means royalty. Because, you want to give. Then you go look into your bank account. Hey, if I give $50,000, I only have left $200,000, and I want to have $250,000 in my bank account. So now a little bit of the self gets involved, and the self doesn't let the chesed come true. That's what it is with all the midos. All chesed, gvura, every midah is there, but how do you finish it off? You finish it off if there's no self-interest. Once there's a self-interest, the self-interest says, wait a minute, if I'm going to give them, I'm going to have less. Malchus says, I made a decision on an earlier sphera, it's going to happen. Because what? There's nothing in me stopping that. That's what royalty really is. Royalty means you're a king over yourself. You have a lot of subjects in yourself. You want to do this, you want to do that. You have to rule over yourself. How do you rule over yourself? You can't rule over yourself unless there's nothing in it for you. If there's a Yetzer Hara says, I want to have this, I want to have that, how can you even rule over yourself? So Yehuda didn't have that. Yehuda would have loved to save Yosef's life. He wanted to, but not the risk of losing his own greatness. That was the fault. Of course he knew what was right. Of course he wanted to save Yosef's life. But if I could lose being the leader, that's the problem. That's the guy who didn't finish off the mitzvah. So guess what happens? When you live that way, what kind of kids do you raise? The same kind of kids. Kids know if parents do things when it's in their self-interest or not. So if Yehuda himself, even though he knew what was good, but couldn't finish off the mitzvah, because why? I may stand to lose something. So he raised two boys, Er and Onan, that felt the same way. They lived exactly where their father lived. And therefore, when Er marries a beautiful woman, he says, it's a beautiful woman, but if I'm going to listen to God and have kids, she's not going to be a beautiful woman anymore. And the self-interest would not allow her to have kids with her. Onan is now told, do the mitzvah of Yibum. And he says, if I'm going to do the mitzvah of Yibum, that means what's being expected of me? To lose everything that I want out of a marriage. I'm not prepared to do that. He wasn't prepared to negate himself. And that's why the mitzvah of Yibum always is involved in a critical step of building the kingship of the Jewish people. That's why, it's not just why didn't the story happen that Yehuda could have married Tamar straight and just have kids and have a king. Kingship has to be forged from sacrifice. Has to be forged from self-negation. And God had to create a situation in Yehuda's life that would force somebody to step up and say, I know it's not in my best interest, but it's in the best interest of others. And I really have nothing to say. I'm a nobody in this story. Somebody has to display that, and then they deserve to be a king. Yehuda had an opportunity when they wanted to sell Yossi. I can't do it. I can't give up my position. So he's lost. The brother sent him back. You're not worthy to be a king. You didn't stand up to us. So he says, I'm going to give Yehuda another chance. But for him, I'm going to give his children a chance. I'm going to tell his children, now you go have kids. You do the mitzvah of Yibum. Nothing doing. They don't want to do it. They're just like their dad. So that now you understand. Now is this the way Avram Avinu is? Was this what Avram Avinu taught the Jewish people? Avram Avinu says, I learned to do chesed in a way that nobody knows that I'm doing the chesed. Did Avram ever get covered for all the chesed he did to everybody? He had such a big house of chesed, a lot of people didn't even know that he ran the house. They didn't know it was his house. That's how much chesed was going on over there. So now you understand the whole idea of tznius that we talked about with Rachel a couple weeks ago, where Rachel gave the codes. We talked about the tznius, everybody has to know. But there's one more point I want to add to that tznius. What tznius is, of course, there was chesed. She did chesed to let her sister have to marry, to get the codes. But what was the deeper part of the tznius? The deeper part of the tznius is that Rachel was giving up her husband. It wasn't only she was giving Leah to Yaakov, but she was losing her husband. Do you understand? Chesed is when I give you something and I will be losing. There's a lot of people saying, I'm going to give you, but you owe me. I'm going to give you and I haven't lost. But real chesed, and this is what kingship is all about, is I can give you even though I stand to lose everything. Why? Because it's not important for me. Rachel is prepared to give up her husband that should have been hers. She's giving up her whole role in the house. Tznius means giving up myself for somebody else. It means giving up even what's rightfully mine for somebody else. And that person merits kingship. When you're prepared to give yourself up for others. And that's what Rachel did. And that's why she had a Yosef that came from him, which we don't have time to get into Yosef today. But we see that this is what's happening over here. That's the critical aspect of tznius. So now we come back. We said the Medrash says that what? Kingship and the merit of the tznius that Tamar had, kings came from her. So let's see what's going on. Yehuda, as we start this story, he was not committed to kingship. He had failed. Now, Torah teaches you, even if you have failed, you can always do tshuva. And this whole story with Tamar is Yehuda's chance to do tshuva and to see, look what your failure of kingship brought you. Not only you can't be a king, your children were unworthy to be kings. And now you understand why the quid pro quo over here is why your wife dies. Because why did you not finish the mitzvah? Why did you not finish the mitzvah? Because I stand to lose. Hashem says, you're afraid you stand to lose? I'm going to make you lose. You're going to lose something even more important. You're going to lose your wife. And now what about his kids? They died for their own averes, but those averes were the exact averes they learned from their father. Your children will die. What does it mean? Your children will act just like you. They're always going to worry, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? And then they won't finish mitzvahs themselves, and they can get to the worst averes like you see Aaron and Onan did. Yehuda, at least, didn't do an aver per se. He just didn't step up to the plate. But if his self-interest was so important, then they say, listen, my self-interest is important. I'll waste my seed as long as I have a pretty-looking wife. I'll waste my seed as long as I don't want to be second fiddle to my deceased brother. That creates terrible averos, and therefore you're not deserving of kingship. So therefore Yehuda doesn't have that. But let's look at Tamar. Let's look at Tamar. Think Tamar, she's a righteous woman. Think Tamar wants to dress up like a harlot. Imagine a nice Beis Yaakov girl from home in Mea Shearim her whole life, very modest woman. She's so modest her father doesn't know what she looks like. She's modest, yeah. Think she wants to go and dress up like a Zoina? She gets no pleasure out of this, but she knows one thing. There has to be children from Yehuda. She knows prophetically there are children to be kings of the Jewish people are going to come from Yehuda. I have to do something that will make this happen. Now, what you're going to see is, but how do you know she's totally selfless in this? Well, she dressed like a Zohar. First, that's not something she wanted to do. Well, maybe she did want to. Maybe she became a bum. Maybe she went off the derech. Maybe she was so turned off of Yiddishkeit, I'm going to fix them all. I'm going to seduce him and going to make a kid for him. I'm going to get the last laugh. But you see, that's not true. Why? Because when she was brought to the court, and Yehuda says, you're going to burn now because you got pregnant. What person who cared about themselves wouldn't at least come up with the evidence in front of everybody and say, you're the man. And you can't deny it because look what I have. She could have publicly humiliated him and got off the hook, no? But that's not a selfless person. She said, there's one thing. I'm committed to bringing the future descendants that are going to be the kings of the Jewish people. But it has to be done in a way that's the way Hashem wants. And if it comes in a way where you embarrass somebody publicly, that's never the will of Hashem. It can't be the will of Hashem that I'm going to embarrass this man publicly. But don't you see what you stand to lose? If I'm worried about my own self-interest, I can't be the mother of royalty. Royalty can never come from self-interest. So Tamar shows him a tremendous act of selflessness, where she can get off the hook and just publicly embarrass him. She says, better I should die. Better there should be no kings. Kings that come out of embarrassing someone that I'm worried about when people are thinking about me, cannot be. Cannot be. That's the mother of royalty. Then, when Yehuda sees what she's prepared to do, only Yehuda knows this right now. When she says, the one, she's very discreet, the one who has, she's not obliged to kill herself. She could just say to you, listen, Yehuda, I'm going to tell you like this. I know you're the father, and I could prove to her, but I'm not going to. I'm just saying this so you'll know that you're the father. Now it's up to you. It's up to you. You want me to die? I'll die. I'm not going to embarrass you. Yehuda now is the biggest challenge of his life. Now Yehuda has a lot of options on the table here. What are the options? Option number one, he could be a cold, crass guy. Say, kill her. What would that show? He's certainly interested in himself. Then he would have failed second time. And Michalowicz's rule of failure in the Torah, one strike you can still play, two strikes you're out. You look throughout the Torah. God always gives you a second chance, but not like baseball. Torah's not like baseball. Baseball, you get 3 strikes, you're out. In Judaism, 2 strikes, you're out. You'd already made the first strike. He didn't defend his brother. So now, the next story, Yehuda, this is your second chance now. It's going to be your last chance. You mess it up, you're out. And now, look, it's much more embarrassing now what he has to do. He's already told the whole group how terrible she was. And now he's going to say, I'm the father. Now, you think they're not going to go, what? And he's going to say, well, no, it was an angel and made me do this. You think they're going to believe that? They're going to believe it's an angel? Can you imagine if, who's that Republican guy, the African-American who... Cain. Can you imagine if Cain would say, the devil made me do it, it's not my fault? What kind of answer is that? What kind of answer is that? Right? So Yehuda's going to say what? The angel made me do it? Good, fine. Good for you and your angels. What kind of public humiliation? He said. So he's got a choice. Either he could say, just let her kill her. Other politicians have let this happen. You should know, in the history of the world, many politicians have let people die, literally die, so that they could continue what they had to do. Now they got the mafia to bump certain people off so they wouldn't have to worry about what's going to happen to them. This happened many times. He said, well, okay, maybe he's a gentleman. I'm not going to kill her. What he could do is like this. He could say, I'll tell you what, you're guilty, but I feel there was temporary insanity, and we will we'll dismiss the penalty. We'll show compassion, and you're guilty, but we'll let you off. We'll dismiss it. Wouldn't that be a good idea? No. You know why? Because she now has to live with the disgrace. Even though she didn't get killed, but she lives in disgrace. He didn't take full responsibility. He's still worried about himself. So what does he have to do? He has to say, it's me and me alone. Fuck me. She's more right to me. She was absolutely right. I was absolutely wrong. Now, how much self-interest did Yehuda have in that comment? 0. Now Hashem says, now you did tshuva. Now you did tshuva. You weren't interested in all in what's going to happen for you. It was one thing and one thing alone, that another person shouldn't be hurt. And now you're going to have children that from these children, many generations later, will come David HaMelech. From this is going to come from this. This is an unbelievable story. Unbelievable story what happens. And just briefly, just to give me 2 more minutes, I just have to explain one other thing. I don't have time to get into all to the details, but just to allay this one thing. So talk about still, how could Yehuda be with this woman who he thought was a Zona? So one line of approach is, what he says to her is, he says to her, he begins to learn that he has to start making improvements. He sees this woman, she's acting like a harlot. And what a nebuch, what kind of woman is this? How low does a woman have to be that she gives herself away to other people? So now Yehuda has a number of options. He's looking at this woman, he says, I don't want to have to do anything to do with her. The mom says, you better do something with her because I insist you do something with her. So what's he going to do with her? So what he does is, he says, you know what, you think you're a Zoina. You know what, I want to upgrade your level of existence. And therefore, what does he give her? He gives her his staff, he gives her her ring seal, he gives her his tzitzis even. He says, these are very royal garments that I have. You know, and I don't want you to live anymore like a prostitute. This isn't proper. And I have to begin to take responsibility for the ladies in this region. And if it comes to a point where you have to be a prostitute, that's a terrible thing. So what am I going to do? So what he decides to do is, a king is allowed to have more than one wife. According to Allah, 100% kosher. The other wives are called a pilegesh, which in English is poorly translated as a concubine. But it means it could be another wife. So some of the commentaries explain that what Yehuda did. He says, listen, I have Rahmanas on you, so I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to upgrade you, that you're going to have the status of being a second wife to me. So you don't have to go through this indignity of having to sell your body for other people. Now, this is not in my best interest. I'm not really interested in picking up a strange woman over here, but I got to do something to take care of you. And obviously, there weren't a lot of other good men for him to marry her off to. So the suggestion is that he took her on as a second wife so that she would feel a sense of self-esteem. And again, it's not to his credit. It doesn't benefit from it. So ultimately, what happened is, to recap, Hashem created a very complicated situation because he needed leadership can only be forged through selfless dedication. And the best way to show this is through the mitzvah of Yibum, correct? The whole story with Ruth, when you get to the grandfather of David HaMelech, was a mitzvah of Yibum, where Boaz had to marry Ruth. You think Boaz needed to marry Ruth? It was also selfless dedication. So Hashem created a situation of selfless dedication. His children didn't want to selflessly dedicate. Hashem said, finish you, I don't need you. Yehuda has to somehow begin this process. Tamar totally had selfless dedication. Yehuda has to show through with this zona, says, maybe you could consider a way to upgrade this woman's quality of life, that she'll feel a little bit better about herself. And it won't be for your interest either to know that you've picked up another woman as a second wife or whatever. But he does that. That becomes the stepping stone where he made a little bit of a movement. So now when the great demand was made on him to give everything away, all his honor away, to admit his fault, he was able to do that. Now you understand why it says when she was at the crossroads, it was at the crossroads of Avram Avinu. What did Avram Avinu have to do with it? It had everything to do with this. Because Avram was the first person to teach us how you do chesed in a selfless way. That's the crossroads to whom all eyes longed to see. Everyone wanted to see Avram. Why? Because Avram was a guy who gave you and didn't expect anything in return. That's where Avram comes back into this picture. That's where Michalowicz comes back into this picture. And that's how he is ultimately able to admit, even though he would suffer from this. So I think it's a very important message. We didn't have time to get to Yosef and Potiphar and all this. The theme continues. We need another class to see how it happened with Yosef and Potiphar's wife and all these things. But what do you see? That the answer, everyone is, she's saying, so what's the message for me? These are kings. But the answer is we all are kings. All the Jews, when Hashem wanted to give the Torah to the Jews, He wanted us to be a mamleches kohanim, a kingdom of priests. Every Jew is a king. So what keeps us back from doing the things we're supposed to do? Everyone's a king. You know who my constituency is? My thousands of different emotional impulses that I go through the day. I have to be king over that. Should I do a chesed now? Should I do gvura now? Should I have compassion now? Should I be humble now? All the spheros that lead to this. There's a decision. It has to be done. But what's going to stop that from happening is if I'm a melech, if I'm a king over my own self. And how can I be a king over my own self? I have to say, stop worrying about my own self-interest. I want to give money. Well, but there won't be enough for me. Stop worrying about your self-interest. No, I have to discipline my child. Well, if I discipline my child, the child won't like me. I want to have a friend. My self-interest isn't going to be taken care of. No, you discipline properly, and they may yell and scream at you, but that's ultimately what's best for the child. Even though, many good parents suffer a lot from their kids. Children, one thing they won't give you the nachas to say that they appreciate what you did for them. Not till they get way older. Well, if I give him what he wants, he's going to like me now. It's going to be good. That's too much self-interest from the parent's point of view. We're not saying you should beat children, God forbid. You should be cruel to children. But tough love is a very difficult thing to show. Tough love, you never gain. You don't get any proximate reward from tough love. Right? When the kid's 25 years old, 30 years old, before the chuppah, then they thank you. But till then, they don't thank you. Maybe if you're lucky, they'll thank you before the chuppah. Maybe not till they're 40 years old will they have the brains to know what you did for them. Where's the self-interest? There's no self-interest. If you have any self-interest, you can't be a melech, and you can't finish up the job that you really want to do. You can't bring out those midos. And that's what Yosef and Yehuda and Tamar and all these people did. You can either be like Aaron Onan says, I can't do anything for nobody unless I get something out of it. I can't do anything. Or you say, no, Malchus means it's not me. And that's what the Jewish people are. Mitzvah Hashem, we've got more people like this. We'll see Mashiach should come. Amen.